Okay, picking back up where we left off, Ms. Klutz, you can continue on with Special Olympics.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And so we won't spend much time on that. I alluded to it before. There's a separate budget that the county allocates for Special Olympics, and so this reflects the salary increase and benefits increase for that position, and it's not a significant amount of money. So then we'll continue on to our state operating funds, and so these are things that were in our expansion request from our budget committee that felt that these were important things to do, although we feel like we can handle those within the state operating budget. So we're not asking the county to pay for these. We feel like we can take care of those in state. In the technology facilitators to 11 months, and so a couple of years ago, was it 1 year or 2 years ago? 2 years ago, we cut them from 11 months to 10 and a half. We've, suffered some significant issues due to that, and we feel like they should be back to 11. And we do have a certified allotment that we could pay that out of, and we feel like it would be adequate here. We also have two other just operating items that we feel that we could fund from the state operating expense. And this is to scan current and inactive files into, and sorry for the acronym, this is HRMS, it's Human Resource Management System, not Harris Road Middle School. Sorry about that. And that would be $35,000. It's just a one-time cost, so one time and we're done. There's continuation costs, so this is to take care of the old records that are stored, and then we would take care of the new ones as they came.
Does this take care of that 2 cycles ago when we took the smaller schools and they were sharing facilitators? Does this address that, or are we continuing to do that? And am I remembering that correctly?
You are remembering that correctly. Okay. But no, it will not. This only
just takes care of adding 2 weeks to their current schedule.
Right. And so we have a lot of information in the justification document. We, prepping those computers and closing them up at the end of school and before school, re-imaging them, and also the staff development that the technology facilitators offer our entire staff in the summer were key reasons that we felt like this was imperative. So the next item would be succession planning for administrators and teacher professional development, and so that was an item we thought was very important to our future success, and so we included that there. Okay. All right, we're going to skip over, and so just a reminder that we reviewed the facilities and operations and technology budget back on March the 4th, and if you had questions, I hope that we've answered them by now, and if we did not, certainly remind me. Okay. And so now we'll talk about our request for capital outlay funds. Okay. So again, as I mentioned before, we divided our capital into 2 different lists or components. One of the requests that have a return on our investment with less than 5 years, because these are just the smart thing to do, the business thing to do. And we feel like that should appeal to our county commissioners and the fiscal responsibility of the tax dollar. So the items that we've listed here are to replace large equipment, child nutrition equipment in our cafeterias for $225,000. Again, we have justification documents for every line item here. This lighting change out due to manufacturing regulatory changes, this could be funded over multiple years, but to do the entire job, it would take $2.5 million. There's energy management upgrades to replace HVAC controls and non-T12 lighting, and those would be at those 2 specific schools listed. And then we're requesting our mail courier van. I think that is extremely old. Our justification document says how old it is. But just by having the fuel savings, we could, within 5 years, we could pay for another vehicle by generating the savings for the fuel. So then the last one is the vehicles. for transportation. So currently, we do more busing of our OCS and McKinney-Vento students on large buses, regular buses, and we feel it's much more efficient to provide vehicles and transport these children this way. And we feel like we can generate the savings to take care of those within 5 years. Okay. So now I'll take you back to the document where we're talking about return on investment. So we're trying to make sure that we don't have to pay that increase to Duke Power. And this document will explain from the top to the bottom, if we replace those child nutrition equipment, we can have a return on investment. And I might need to make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully you can see it. So if we replace this child nutrition equipment, the first year we would save $80,000 in utility costs. $80,000, and the outlay would be $225,000. It just makes sense, doesn't it? And so then if we go to our T12 lighting phase out, if we invest $2.5 million in the first year, we would generate $714,000 in energy savings. And that in itself would take care of the increase to Duke Power. So we can invest in equipment, or we can send our money to Duke Energy.
And those are recurring savings.
They are recurring savings every single year.
And I could remind any Republican sitting at the table that Jim Rogers from Duke is the one that brought the Democrat National Committee to Charlotte. So see, there's more incentive to not send money to Duke Energy.
Okay.
Well,
At a loss, I might add.
at a loss to the city of Charlotte. That's right.
The big thing is will the county...
At a loss to the customers of Duke Energy.
The real thing is will the county allow us to maintain this money because we are creating this favorability? Will they allow us to maintain it and use it for other things?
And so instead of requesting additional money to go back into the classroom, we're generating our own savings to go back into the classroom. And certainly, I would expect that would be what the county would desire.
Will you have a process in place to track this usage? Because I mean, you've got these usages, and I guess you'll convert them to some type of commodity, like kilowatts or something like that, so that you can figure out how many kilowatts you've really saved to see if your savings are really in this ballpark. If we really did experience this type after we've gotten all of this equipment in.
We have an energy manager that tracks that already for us on a day-to-day basis. So certainly that would be something that could be tracked very easily. Yes.
Because I think for us as a board, we would like to see something that he would come back to say, all right, we invested in these pieces of equipment, we experienced these kinds of savings, to see if truly our analysis was accurate or if we need to make some other kind of changes. But, you know, when you start doing ROIs, you need to kind of have a scorecard of how effective your ROI was and were you really good, did your estimates really pan out?
We do have systems in place to do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
One of the concerns I have, Ms. Klutz, is, we did the contract with Educon last year, the energy consultants, and we were expecting considerable savings from our electrical usage based on hiring them to help us with this. So I just wonder what's going to be overlapped and how to really get a true picture of the benefits we're supposed to receive from Educon. Now that if we get funding for this, which we may not, but if we do get funding for it, it's definitely going to make them look like heroes when actually it came from, a good portion of it came from the changes of these energy-consuming items that we're talking about. But that is a concern that I have because, we spent good money to hire the consultants to do this, and then, I guess all it's going to do is just make them look better in the long run. But the bottom line is, though, we're going to be saving money one way or the other. And but anyway, Mr. Shoemaker, you have a question?
Well, inherent in your question is did Educon help Frank with these calculations on this equipment, or did he develop these on his own? for the kitchen, for the child nutrition program, was EduCon a part of the help putting together the savings process, or was that something that was self-calculated?
I think Frank is here, but I do not, especially for the T12, T8 lighting, I'm pretty sure that EduCon did not play a part in that. That was something that we received from our facilities department, and there were, and I think we sourced the document in your justification for that. And if we didn't, we could certainly provide it. But there was a whole study there from going T12 to T8 or T8 to T12, I'm not sure, but anyway, to change those, there's a study that indicated there was an ROI of less than 3 years, I believe, or right around 3 years, whatever's indicated here. But I do not believe that EduCon was involved in that process.
Well, I guess maybe not directly, but 2 Decembers ago, they gave us a presentation to our subcommittee. So, EduCon did, I'm sorry. In fact, I guess I see Dave's here in the back, and Lynn, this isn't a question for right now, but at that time, there was some discussion about some of these, the replacements it was full fixture and ballast, and some that had some sort of retrofit device, depending on which type of fixture we were using. So, if whatever we can kind of go back and detail, just provide a little more information on exactly what we're doing, because that may not even be part of it. I just remember that discussion with that day they did a presentation, and then we had the fixture supplier. I don't know, Lynn, do you remember what we did this over at the Glenn Center, and it's been a while, and that was that time we had a full proposal for swapping out all of Wolf Meadow, which I assume that's kind of what we've based this on. So if you could just maybe jog my memory a little bit, and the rest of the board on some of that information of where it came from. I mean, and I don't mean that right this minute. Just maybe give us.
I know. I think Cliff Maurer was, instrumental in creating these numbers. And I'm not sure who he was working with at the time, whether it was just our own internal electrical staff or if he had consulted EduCon or not. I know that we have been looking at both of those solutions. I believe this is predicated on the replacement of the bulbs and ballast, retaining the fixtures. I don't know if that's true in all schools, but I believe that is the concept. Mainly because we've had mixed results coming back to us about the complete replacement and also about going to something like a T5 fixture. There's just a lot of controversy in the industry right now about that. So
it was the T5 that didn't fit 1-to-1 that you had to retrofit. Okay,
yeah. And so this is actually using the same basic fixture but replacing bulbs and ballasts. So.
Mr. Chair. Here's what I'd like to propose, and I hope it makes sense. If you know the energy usage from previous studies and from our own data that we collect of all of our facilities, then you must know which facility is the least energy efficient. And you ought to be able to add together the need for certain equipment, certain lighting, certain windows, and other facility or other items that would make that school more efficient, such that if you could buy those things with county money and pilot that school and the retrofitting of all those things in that school, and let's say get all that done in 6, 8, 9 months or something, pretty quickly you could actually justify the actual savings and prove the needs of all the other facilities that we have. And it seems to me that picking a facility that's most in need of those upgrades would justify the reasoning to the county for all the other facilities. Again, I'm just talking generally, but in terms of the big budget and the need for so many facilities to be addressed all at one time, could be proven by the selection of one facility and fixing the things at that facility, and then being able to extrapolate the savings, the equivalent savings at many other facilities that also needed the same.
I'm pretty sure that's why Wolf Meadow was picked at that time. At that meeting, when we asked for a full proposal, if we wanted to do this, what would it look like, how much would it cost, and get a return, and we picked, the proposal was based on what that time, and I don't know what it's like now, but at that time, that's why Wolf Meadow was picked.
So it sounds like the selection or the fixing Wolf Meadow would prove the needs and the savings of many other facilities. Is what kind of
It would
that's what
certainly
I'm
give
hearing.
the data and justify what we're talking about doing.
Okay. So with that information, we would just suggest that, that it makes business sense to do the requested items that are, there's a return on the investment less than 5 years. And so we had the county's help in differentiating the list. Now, we do not want to underemphasize our need for the items that are on this list, because oftentimes in the past they were competing. So we would have things that made business sense and had a really good return on investment, but we knew that there were safety concerns or there was a roof that needs to be taken care of. And so we were in the driver's seat to prioritize those, and we just were conflicted a lot. So we know the right thing to do, but we know that there's a return on investment. So that's why those lists are separate. They're not mixed in.
And so the return on investment was based on what the county and the county CFO had recommended as a 3-year return on investment at this point.
We talked about a 3-year return, but she said that we should, anything that had a 5-year or less return, we should include on the list.
Okay.
So that's what we
That
did.
sounds a little bit more reasonable, because a lot of times we're doing, our schools are 50-year project lives and that type of thing, and we should definitely stretch out our ROI to match kind of what we do.
Yes.
I'm sorry to be chatty Cathy tonight. We're on slide 63, aren't we?
61.
61. Row 3 has been scratched out for 468,000.
Right.
Should row 9, the cumulative column, be adjusted, minusing out 468,000?
So yes, at the end of the day, the capital request is $468,000 less. The reason it's reflected in this manner is that this was the Budget Committee's document, and this was their recommendation. So after they convened and they were done with their work, our board was able to allocate $468,000 for these security vestibules. So to be as transparent as possible, we decided we would just overstrike. And once you guys have seen it and it's presented to you, we can take that off to go to the county. But certainly, the request would be $468,000 less. It is in the cumulative account, and we would delete that because it's funded. But we wanted to be as transparent as possible.
But was there another line item that fell right below this one?
The one you're seeing, then
The last one is the number 9 facilities mobile unit major repair. Was there a $468,000 item right below that one?
We're not finished. We have another page to go. Yes, sir. The answer is yes. Okay. So we have, oh, Carolyn's got a question.
Yeah, well, maybe, are you going to talk about vans now?
Are they on this page?
Yeah, the McKinney Vento vans. Or did you skip?
That was in the return on investment, so I've already talked about it.
Well, yeah, but you can.
But you want to talk, you can.
Yeah, because I did have a question on
Okay.
that. Because I'm just wondering if we still really have the full cost of that, because in comparison to that, you were looking at the cost of the fuel comparison. It seems like that's really all we did. Did we really take into consideration the cost of the personnel, though, on that? Because, you're looking at, we looked at 10 vans, because did we look at the complete personnel cost on that, though? Was that included in that also? Because are we using 10 extra drivers, though? And looking at the cost of those drivers in comparison to that? Because you've got did we have 10 extra bus drivers, though, to go with those 10 extra vans?
We did consider those things that you've mentioned. Currently, if they're driving a bus, then that extends their time. If they're a normal 6-hour employee, then they could be getting 8 or they could be getting 10 hours, and that's overtime. So when we looked at this evaluation, we did consider we would have separate drivers. We would employ them for 4 hours or less so that there wouldn't be retirement benefits and hospitalization that we incurred. So we could certainly have a significant reduction in the amount of outlay that we had by doing this. Yes, we did.
That was my major concern, making sure that we were, so you're saying bring on somebody part-time to do that instead of using
Current drivers.
full-time drivers in to do that.
And there was a benefit too to the student. So the student would have less time not on a bus, in a vehicle, in a car. So that would impact the amount of time that that student was able to get to school and home. So it was positive all the way around.
How about liability insurance? Because you were having to pick up more liability insurance, so that was covered it with that too, taking that into consideration too, the extra liability insurance?
That we would not have to acquire additional liability insurance. The vehicles would be covered under, just our normal policy. I mean, we would have to add the new cars, but that would be just a normal expense. But it wouldn't be additional expense because of this type of transportation. It'd be just like any other vehicle that we added to our policy.
Thank you.
Plus, just for the viewing audience and for the board as well, you might want to make mention to how many McKinney-Vento students we're currently picking up all over. You may have a rough number. Well, maybe you or maybe Miss Yates that's there. Somebody knows something about
I'm wanting to
how
think
many
we've
we're
got
picking up.
400. Is it 400?
No, I think we have 356 McKinney-Vento
Those
students. Now,
students.
how many of those we're actually picking up, that I don't know. But it'd have to be a pretty good sized number to require 10 vans to do that. Maybe Miss Donna Smith can add some light to that.
I'm afraid to give you an exact number. We do have 300-plus McKinney-Vento students for our viewing audience. All of those are not necessarily transported via a bus, so we'd have to go back and look, but I think we're looking at around close to 200. And can I just do a rough estimate there?
Well, that was a last-minute thing, but I just like to
I
keep
would prefer to
people-
give you an accurate number, so
Sure.
it's just
Well,
around.
maybe you can look at that between now and the time that we look at it. I mean, this is not something that's going to make or break what we're doing here, but just for information for everyone, so that they'll know that this is a big thing. And when you're running a yellow bus at 7 or 8 miles a gallon, and you go to a van at 22, 23, or better miles per gallon, you're getting 3 times the mileage, picking up the same students. There's so many more benefits for the students because they have less time, as Ms. Klutz had mentioned, less time on the road, less time in the bus, more time in the class, and all the things that's going to benefit a disadvantaged child to start with.
Plus our numbers change daily.
And that's what we want to do, is try to help the disadvantaged children. And if we can get these vans, that will in fact serve that purpose. Thank you.
Just a clarification, on the smaller vans that we are proposing to use for the McKinney-Vento children, are we putting cameras on those smaller vehicles? I mean, we're putting cameras on
Yes.
we're putting cameras on the regular yellow buses, I gather. So we are also
That was
putting the
something
equivalent
that-
camera in a smaller vehicle for that population.
That was included in the price that was given here, and that was something Mr. Thompson felt strongly about, that we needed to do that. And
For
so-
security purposes,
For
yes.
security purposes. Anytime that we are adding vehicles, activity buses, vehicles, we're including the security camera as a component of that cost.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the next capital outlay list. And so we've talked about the items that are here. Don't necessarily have a return on investment, but they're items that we certainly need. And because our capital outlay funds have been very minimal over the last few years, we're behind. So are we Okay. So the first item on the list is to replace the roof at Northwest Cabarrus Middle. That would be $1.2 million. Are we on the? 61. 61. Yes, 61. Okay. The next item would be the security camera systems for all of our yellow buses. We put them on, several years ago, we put them on our regular, this isn't all of them. These are the ones that we didn't include, or the new ones. So if we've acquired a bus between the time that we put security cameras on all of them, we just have failed to include that to keep that current. So those need to be done on the yellow buses. And then the item number 4, I'm going to skip over 3, is to install security systems in the interior and exterior of various schools. And I do have the list of schools that would be included if you're interested. If you have a specific comment or question about a certain school, I can address that. And then we have to replace the remainder of the roof at Weinkauf. Again, roofs are pretty important. And then we have activity buses, and so there were the request was for 6 activity buses, and as we prioritized and worked through this list in Budget Committee, we thought maybe we could ask for 3 as a higher priority because it was really, we were in desperate need, and then we would put 3 as a lower priority. So that's why you see that. It looks like it's duplicated on the other list, but it's not. We need 6 in total. The next item would be to construct the security vestibules for high schools and middle schools. We've taken care of the elementary schools, and we would be making a request to do that at high schools and middle schools. Back to the cuts over the past years, we, in our former life, we had an allocation of furniture and equipment and capital to our schools. Takes care of cafeteria tables, it takes care of desks, it takes care of computers. We've not had that for a significant number of years, and we feel that we need to take care of some of the needs of the schools, especially the cafeteria tables and the desks. Some of them are just really in need.
That was included, though, when you built a new school? You did have funding for that, right?
Yes, if we built a new school, there was funds for furniture and equipment, yes.
In the vestibules, I'm sorry, my tongue gets down. How many middle and high schools would that be for that 1.7?
Let's look at the justification document.
Well, I was looking at it, and I was trying to see if it actually
Security
told.
vestibules. And Mr. Whitkey's here. Maybe he can help me out with that. It's all of the schools that do not currently have one.
And I was just wondering how many that would be. It just says middle and high schools. If you could just get that, I would just like to kind of know the number. I know we had the elementary finished up, but I was just curious how many middle and high that would be.
Okay. And then the last item on this particular page, not the last item, is to replace mobile unit major repairs. Is to replace mobile units and do major repairs on mobile units. We have some extremely old mobile units in our system. Some of them can't even be moved from school to school. And so the intent was never to have a mobile unit as a permanent structure, although that's what we do. So if we're going to have them as a permanent structure, we need to replace them after about 20 years. So that's what we have here on this request. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip over to the next list is on page 72. It's a continuation of our capital outlay request. So we're asking for band instruments for the 6th grade band, and that would be $10,000 per middle school for the new requirement of 6th grade band to help the schools equipped for that. And generally, again, that would have come out of their capital allotment in previous years, but they've not had a capital allotment, so we're asking for it specifically. The next item is the other three activity buses that I told you was going to look duplicated, but it's just the three now and the three later in lower in priority. The next item is service trucks for four mechanic positions and one new technician, and that might look a little odd to you in that you didn't see a request for the you didn't see a request for transportation personnel, so why would we ask for vehicles? So through Budget Committee, we decided that if we could use the growth money or any additional state money, because our transportation allotment is about a year behind, and if we were able to fund those positions with the growth money or additional state money in that transportation allotment, again, we can't spend that transportation allotment for anything but transportation, then we would then make the request for capital. Because you cannot spend transportation money on capital items. So a vehicle, we could not use state money to purchase the vehicle for this employee. So that should come from local. So that's why you see it here. The next item would be the security cameras for the activity buses. So once we get all the yellow buses taken care of with security cameras, we want to move on to the activity buses. We think that's just as important as our yellow buses. Students are on those buses just as much as the yellow buses. The next item would be tools to complete the complement needed for the garage and the body shop. So these technicians, mechanics provide their own tools, use their own tools, and we're suggesting that we provide them the tools necessary to complete their job.
And as a very wise director of transportation has pointed out to us, it's the equivalent of teachers paying for classroom expenses. So the mechanics in our transportation department are doing as much or more in terms of personal expense. Did I get that right? Okay.
Okay. So the next item would be a floor lift system for the bus. And so if you're not a mechanic, that might look scary to you on the justification page if you don't want to crawl up under a bus, but thank goodness we have certified mechanics that are willing to do that kind of thing.
No, we don't have one now, or is this additional?
We only have two systems now, but it's not enough to go around. We've got 14 working bays, so we need some additional units.
Okay, so you have 14 working bays and 2 lifts right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Klutz, before you continue on to student services, I have to ask you about our budget for last year. You know, we talked about the wheel alignment machine that we approved. What's the status on that?
We've currently issued a purchase order for it, and so we should be waiting for that to come in. The wheel alignment, tire alignment,
Tire
wheel
alignment, yeah,
Mhm.
wheel alignment.
Yeah, we're currently waiting.
It's been authorized and
Yeah.
purchase
Well,
order.
I know we approved it last year. We approved the purchase, but have we ordered it? Are we waiting for it to come in? And
It's been authorized to order. It should, the purchase order should be issued.
Mr. Thompson, you might want to come to the mic
Yeah.
so that we can hear you, and the viewing audience that cares might want to hear it too.
Yeah, we're just waiting to get the order put in. Yeah, because like you said, y'all authorized it last year. So we're just waiting to get that item ordered. We were kind of looking at a budget shortfall earlier this year, so we want to make sure we were going to make it with the rest of our items before we actually purchased it. Because we want to make sure we're not running out of repair monies before we get to the end of the school year and sacrificing the repair parts because of the tire machine. So we're in process of that.
When do you anticipate having that wheel machine ordered? Wheel alignment
Probably
machine?
6 weeks. I mean, delivered probably about 6 weeks.
Okay.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I need.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson. Thank you, Ms. Clutt.
So the next item would be, it comes from Student Services, but it's for artificial turf on one of the high school fields. And that request was made as a joint effort between the county and our system in a desire to share field usage. And so in order to maintain and keep those fields in operational, in operation, we feel like it would be necessary to have an artificial turf if we're going to use it all the time. Barry looks like he has a question.
Well, I know Donna's had a conversation with the county and the CVB. Could you tell us kind of where you all are? Because this, it was raised in the Budget Committee meeting that there's possibly some room for collaboration between a bunch of different entities where this field would service not only our high school students and pupils and athletic programs, but also extracurricular things which could bring some added value to the community, bring extra dollars in through the use of different sport programs. So I'll leave it to you, Donna.
Okay. Glad to talk about that because we feel like we're making some progress. We've actually had 3 different meetings since that was discussed in the Budget Committee. Some have been informal, some have been formal, and what we've learned from this, we've met also with Mike Downs, the county manager, Londa Strong through the Parks, Active Living and Parks Department, looking at what our options are as we collaborate together. And part of this is looking at the land use around Central, what would be available there, and talking with the private entities and saying, let's come to the table and talk more. CVB has talked with us. They do have an arrangement already with the county of where those percentage dollars are going over the next 2 years. And again, everything's in conversation point, but what we've been able to do as a result of the conversation is align key people together who are having conversations to say, how can we work more closely together with funding that doesn't necessarily belong to the county and definitely not funding that belongs to the district. It's outside private funding. We don't have recommendations as such yet. It's still talking there. And other conversations actually include the Cabarrus Health Alliance, talking about any federal funding that could be possibly available for this. So again, spreading the circuit out there to say, we have this need, how can you help us? And with that opportunity, we hope we'll be able to come back with recommendations.
But Mike, but the county knows that we're going to come up with this $800,000, and the thing is we're all playing together in the sandbox to help this going, and so it looks like a lot more collaboration going on where it's a community effort rather than just something to help Central out or something like that.
Exactly. We like to call it a sandbox has turf in it. But we are playing in the same sandbox and having great conversations.
And so the last item on our capital outlay list, and we know that our needs are far surpass what's listed here, but we know that we also were told we needed a target amount, not a full needs list. And so the last item here is to pave the emergency access road to George Lyles and at Winkler Middle School.
And I have a question there, and I was about to say, have we approached the state or DOT at all on that road at all?
I'm hoping Mr. Whitkey can answer that question for us.
We talked briefly, Ms. Carpenter, when there was a question about gaining access off of George Lyle. We met with a DOT engineer out there, and this was a sale of the property to allow George Lyles to come past our land, and that was worked out through the county's offices and myself. But I did ask at that time if there was a possibility, and I think that he wasn't in a position to answer me, and I really, the next step for us, if there's really interest in doing this, is to sit down with the regional folks and see what kind of interest they might have. Obviously, if you're building George Lyles extension, there's a lot of concrete and pavement being put down. So if nothing else, the timing of it would be good to coordinate at the same time that the road is being extended.
Well, I can tell you they have moved they were going to let the bids on that, the new cut, the new extension, they were going to let the bids in April, and now I know they've moved that to May. They've changed that date. They just announced that last MPO meeting. So I think now they're moving along with that extension now. There was some problem with the acquiring some of the right-of-way. So I think now's time, and they, the new people and everything, so I think now's maybe the time to get with them and maybe make some contacts with the new people now with that. And that's why I didn't know if we had made any kind of meeting with anyone on that. But I know they are going to let those contracts in May on that, so.
Thank you, we'll do that.
So that completes our request for capital outlay. And again, I'll remind you and take you back to page 14 as the summary of the document for what we'll request was 24-ish million, nearly $25 million. And so what I need from you between now and next Monday are any questions and concerns that would prevent you from approving the budget that you need addressed. And while I appreciate everyone's personal concerns, I need a general direction from the board if you want to eliminate, withdraw, change. So it's going to be hard for me. If one board member wants to add and one board member wants to delete, I need to have a reconciliation from the board in general.
Well, one thing about it, Ms. Klutz, and that is, this, remember, is only a proposed budget, and there will be changes, as you mentioned in the onset of our discussion about the House and the Senate and, of course, the governor. They'll have to do all the negotiating down there. And then when it comes down to the county, this is considerably more than what they have paid in years past because of the expansion and continuation and all that. And so, I think that the board had some very good questions and some very good concerns tonight. And board members, we're going to be asked to adopt the proposed budget as it is. If you have suggestions or comments or things like that you would like to get to Ms. Klutz, please send your questions, concerns to Mr. Kirk, and he'll forward it right on to Kelly, and then make sure I get a copy of it so I'll know where you're at on this. But we'll be expected to adopt this next Monday night. And so with that being said, Ms. Klutz, it was a quite lengthy report. I thank you for taking the time. But remember, we saved a meeting because we didn't have the one on March 21st. And so we had to combine that meeting and tonight's meeting as well. And so you did an excellent job. Thank you and all the ones that helped you do this. And so we'll get back with this on the 15th. And Mr. Walters, you have a question?
Yeah, just a question. This is back to the technology presentation we got last month. It doesn't add up to the same numbers we have here. Do we know why? It says here you have four.
Okay, I know what you're.
From last month's presentation, you had 3.7, I think, and then.
Okay. Yes, because what you see in this request is the expansion, the increase to funding that we're requesting, which is $4.2 million.
So last month we were presented with what?
So, yes, last month when I gave you that detail of the $2 million, that number that you're referring to, that's money that's currently in our operating, in that $50 million that we get from the county, that money is already allotted and given to us. We were just showing you how we spend that in detail. And that's a little bit abnormal because we don't go through the rest of our budget that way, but our board has gotten used to that, and our county is somewhat, they like that too. So when we talk about our technology dollars, we just disclose as much as we can. This is how we're going to spend what we currently have.
Okay, well, I might talk to you offline about it as well.
All right.
Okay, Ms. Klutz, I think that's all. Okay, and we'll move on to our next report, and this will be coming from Matthew Fail. And what I wanted to say is, as soon as we get through with Matthew's report, then we'll move right on into the items for consideration. And I'd like to have Mr. Testerman come up first, and then after that, we're going to take a 5-minute recess unless the board has objections, okay? All right, Mr. Fail, you're ready to go. When you get ready, he's going to talk to us on Common Exam.
Good evening. It's nice to be in front of all of you again. Today we get to talk about measures of student learning or common exams. Bear with me as I share with you the information in this presentation because I know that you've seen it prior to tonight, but this is also an opportunity to make sure our public has all of this information, so I'm going to cover it all in detail. Whoops. Sorry, I have to remember this is not a PowerPoint. First, North Carolina has identified 3 primary goals for the measures of student learning or common exams. One is to develop and increase the effectiveness of teachers. Another is to have an effective teacher in every classroom. And the final is to see evidence of achievement and growth for all students. That's the reasoning for implementing the measures of student learning or common exams. Some general information that everyone needs to be aware of relative to common exams are that they will be used to populate Standard 6 for teachers. Standard 6 populates whether or not a teacher has met expected growth, exceeded expected growth, or does not meet growth for his or her students. Common exams were created by teachers across the state. They were brought to the Department of Public Instruction and together created these measures of student learning. These common exams will take the place of teacher-made exams that would have been given at the end of the year or semester for your high school exams. Common exams are aligned to the North Carolina Common Core and Essential Standards. They will have multiple choice and short answer type questions in them. The bulk of the assessment is made up of multiple choice responses. Most exams have roughly 3 constructed response or short answer type questions. The common exams will require that teachers grade the short answer or constructed response items. Common exams are 90 minutes in length. They may be given in one 90-minute session or 2 45-minute blocks. The short answer questions have to be scored by 2 scores to ensure that the scores are valid. Students who receive accommodations will receive accommodations during common exams. So if a student is an exceptional child or has a 504 or other reasons where they receive classroom accommodations, they will be expected to have the accommodations for these assessments as well. And the common exams, at least for this year, will be paper and pencil test. Some specific information relative to the high schools. Common exams will be given May 31st and June 3rd. All students are expected to take the common exams, and for common exams, seniors will not be exempt from these exams. Seniors may be exempt from teacher-made exams for which they qualify. Students will be released at 11 o'clock, June 4th through the 7th, in order to provide time for teachers to score the common exams. June 4th through the 7th has been designated as early release days already on the calendar. We're just going to release them at 11. Students will take the full exam, in other words, the full 90-minute period during their periods with a 5-minute break at the midpoint. We'll give a 120-minute block for this assessment so that the teachers will have time to give directions, disseminate information, have the 5-minute break, and gather all the materials at the end. The common exams do count as 25% of the student's final grade, and we will use 100-point conversion scores that will be provided to the schools after the common exams. I've already been asked, what does that look like? How do we create the conversion scores? We're going to use 2 methodologies for the common exams. One is the students' raw scores. It's really not a conversion, it's just what their scores were. They will be placed on a bar graph so that we can see where students fell on the particular exam. Then we're going to take 5-year historical grades, and we're going to apply that to the results. So, for example, if we looked 5-year historically at a physics course, for example, and I'm just making these numbers up, 25% had A's and 15% had B's, and 30% had C's, and so on and so forth, we would apply that distribution across the raw scores and plot them on the bar graph as well. Then the principals will look at both of those graphs and determine which is in the best interest of the students and choose one of those models for that course. And then we will apply those scores and send those out to teachers to be applied to the grades. This is a list of the high school common exams. I'm not going to go over them in detail. You've seen these before, but just so that everybody knows, these are the common exams that are available at the high school level. I'll go over middle school in just a minute. Middle schools. Middle school common exams will be given in a window between May 13th through June the 6th. Again, all students are expected to take the common exams. They will be given in social studies for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and science for 6th and 7th graders. And that's just because the 8th grade has the science EOG. They will take their exams during a regular period, and they're going to take theirs in 2 45-minute blocks. So the first 45-minute block they'll take during a regular period, and that first 45-minute block they will do the short answer portion, or the portion that has the short answer questions. There'll be multiple choice questions in there as well, but the portion that contains the short answer will be done in the first 45-minute block, giving teachers time to score them prior to the second part being completed and those sheets brought to accountability for scoring. That's all the general information I have for measures of student learning, and I'll take any of your questions.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions? Let me ask mine before we get going here, just to sort of throw this out. With the high schools, it's not pen and pencil, is that right? It's not.
No, let me clarify. Measures of student learning or the common exams are paper and pencil.
Okay.
However, you may be confusing those with the end of course or EOCs, which are all online.
Okay, well, that answers that question then. And then one other concern that I have is the time frame between the first students testing and the last students testing. You know, you're looking at 3-4 weeks, and I know that was a concern, or is a concern, and that Ms. Probst has with the technology when it comes to testing and all next year.
Yes.
But that same theory is happening here with this because of the 3 weeks difference. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't understand the difference in testing.
Well, the students that take it's the same thing. It's the students that's going to be taking the test next year on computer.
Yes.
At first, they don't have as much learning time as the ones that's taking it the last, which was a concern. 3 or 4 days is a concern, but not 3 weeks is a big concern.
True. So the idea of the...
Now, that's for next year, but for this year, though, for this common exam that we're talking about, the 3-week gap there.
Are you talking about? You must be talking about for middle school.
Yeah, for middle school, yes.
So the middle school portion is they chose that particular window. The middle school principals got together and chose that particular window. It's not a requirement that we have that kind of a window involved, and it primarily was done so that teachers would have time to score those few constructed response items before the scoring was in. But it's a window that we could adjust.
I would suggest that we do suggest that, that we do maybe look at changing that a little bit, simply because that I would like for me personally, and I'm just one, but I would like to see a more fair playing field. Equal learning, 2 or 3 days, 4 days, no problem, but 3 weeks is a vast difference. And you can't expect a child that took the test up front on a certain date to score as well as one that's had 3 weeks additional learning.
Okay,
3 weeks.
Your point's very well taken, and I'll make sure that I share that with the middle school principals when we discuss it again for the decisions next year. But I do want to clarify the concept. There's not going to be a 3-week window between students who took the assessments, even at middle school, even though you see that big window in there. What's going to happen is within that first week or two of that window, all of your middle school students are going to take the first part, the first 45 minutes. Then there's going to be a bit of that window where teachers are scoring, and then near the end of that window, you're going to have the students take the second part. So you're not going to have a group of students who have a huge difference in
I understand. So
learning.
So you are breaking it down to 45-minute sessions
Yes,
for middles, whereas high school
has one 90-minute.
90-minute.
Correct.
With an option of 2 45 minutes, I believe.
Not at the high
There's
school.
no option at the high school.
Right. At the high school, they chose 90-minute. At the middle school, they choose 2 45 minutes.
But there's like a 3 or 4 day difference too, with
Yeah,
the
it's not as
testing,
big
so-
as a difference, but it's still a difference, and
Sure
it's
it
something we
is.
can discuss in the
Well,
future.
I hope that you'll definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Board members, do you have any other questions? Mr. Shoemaker, you have any questions on common exam?
No.
Ms. Carpenter? Mr. Kiger?
One quick one, and here I am again with my keen grasp for the obvious, but if chemistry or physics, if you're an AP, you take the AP exam, you're not taking both, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
AP was exempt from measures of student learning or common exams.
Okay, but honors, you'd take this, so even if you're a senior, if you're taking honors chemistry,
You're still going to take the
you're
common
taking
exam.
a common exam, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Mr. Walter?
Okay, the middle school, is there 2 tests? There's a science and a social studies, or is it all done in one exam?
No, they're 2 separate
So
assessments.
you have a test period, then you for the science, say, and then 2 weeks later you're doing the social studies? Is that?
It won't be that long of a
whatever.
lag time, but yes, one day they'll take the science, and maybe the next day or 2 days later they'll take the social studies. Then the teachers will have time to score, and then they'll do it again for the second part.
And on the high school level, we've got, it counts as 25% of the student's final grade. What are we doing now? Is it up to the teacher to decide what percentage of that
No, final exams count as 25% of the
they always have?
Well, I haven't been here but 3 years, but to my knowledge, yes.
Well, okay.
I'm hearing yes, yes.
Okay, that's standard. Okay. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Phil. Some bad news came out of Atlanta recently about test scores that were bumped up or massaged or fraudulently increased. Can you give us, and you talked earlier about plotting historical grades for certain courses. Can you give us any more detail, please, about what mechanism audits the integrity of the grades so that parents and taxpayers in Cabarrus County can have a very strong reassurance that the grades the kids are given are the grades the kids gave themselves, in effect, by knowing the subjects?
Sure. So there's actually a couple of components to that. First of all, this is not a proficiency measure. In other words, if a teacher scores you, let's just say they cheat and they give you a really good grade and you didn't deserve it, there's no benefit. There's no advantage to that because they're not going to report this percent of your kids made A's or B's or anything like that, or had a proficiency of a level 1, 2, 3s, or 4s. This is about growth. So it's in the teacher's best interest to really score the reality, because over the years, as they are comparing, one class to the next, that kind of thing, it's best just to be real and just show that growth. There's no advantage to inflating or deflating scores. So that's one element of it. The second element is a validation of the scoring. So you will have 2 scores for all of the constructed response, which is the only element of the assessment that you could have subjectivity to. Like I said, the average is about 3 constructed response questions per assessment, and you're looking at assessments that are roughly 50 questions big. I've got a sheet that tells you how many questions on each assessment. So when you're looking at a whole assessment, you're talking about a very small percentage of that assessment that's subjective in the first place. And you're going to have 2 scores looking at that particular question. So scorer 1's going to look at it without scorer 2 being around, and they're going to say, I give this person this particular score. And then you're going to have another scorer look at it independently without seeing scorer 1's score, and they're going to judge it. The 2 scores will be bubbled on the answer sheet, and if they're different, it'll be the average of the 2. Does that answer your question?
Is that good enough?
I would suggest yes. In the past, keep in mind that teachers gave final exams and there was nobody around any level of validation. They gave their final exam, they graded their final exam, they put the final exam in the grade book.
Are the 2 scorers peers of each other?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, thank you. I think, overall, I'm not a big fan of standardized tests, and I think we've gone way overboard on it. But I think in this particular instance, because we're basically replacing an existing test, and instead of it being a test that was created by the individual teacher, it is a common test that all public school students in regular public schools will be taking. And I think that's an important distinction between regular public schools and charter schools that parents need to understand, is that if you send your child to Cabarrus County schools next year for essentially all of your college prep classes in middle school and above, you will be able to know not only how your child compared to the other students in his or her class, but to all students who took the same course throughout the state of North Carolina. So you will know how well we have done. Charter schools won't be able to tell you that. And so I think this is an important thing. But in your very second slide of your presentation, you had 3 goals that were set up, and they're all very laudable goals, but I don't think in and of themselves implementing these common exams is going to help us get there. And so the question is, how do we take the results from these exams and drive towards those laudable goals of having an effective teacher in every classroom.
So the system that they plan on using for the measures of student learning is called EVAS, EVAAS. Please don't ask me what it means, what the acronym stands for. But essentially, it is a tool for developing a student's growth. So from each year when they take the assessment, we can take a look at how did your students do. And we've already got that information for end of course and end of grade test. So we have worked with our school level administration. We've demonstrated what those reports look like, and we've coached those administrators for how to have the conversations with teachers. So there are two ways of looking at it. One is you have a teacher who's just getting phenomenal growth, and you see it year after year after year. Well, how do you capitalize on this teacher's gifts? Mm-hmm. How do you help that teacher begin to share the kinds of great work that they're doing in their classroom? So we've established the professional learning community concept where they work in collaborative teams, where they have the opportunity to share best practices, and an administrator can help guide some of that if they're really seeing those kinds of scores come out. Some of your best teachers can be some of your quietest, so sometimes it takes a little nudge and push to really get them out to share. On the other hand, you may have a teacher who, over time, is continuing to show a lack of student growth. So it allows you, one, to have some real data to share with that teacher and say, you know, I've been seeing this. We've maybe had some discussions about stepping it up in the classroom, but now we've got some real data to back that up. And then we can provide some coaching and support for that teacher. It may be mentor, it may be professional development, it may be paying attention to special things when they're in those same subject collaborative teams. There's a whole realm of it, and I'd probably need Kathy and Jason up here to share all of that. But essentially, it's the work that happens after we get the information back that's really going to help us reach the kind of laudable goals that you see on here, not the assessment itself.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, that's going to be the key, is the follow-on, the follow-up work to really make this reach the goals that it was set out for.
Yes, I agree.
I think EVOS stands for good data if it's used well.
Yeah. I like that interpretation. I think I'll just use that. That'll be good.
Okay, thank you, board members, for your comments and concerns, and thank you, Mr. Fail, for your report on common exams.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, we're going to move along now and get into the section where the items that we'll be discussing here will be, there's 12 items all total. We'll either go to the action agenda for April the 15th or the consent agenda. And the first item, we moved from 5.12 to 5.1, and we have Dennis Testerman with us tonight. And Dennis, while you're coming to the podium to make your presentation, I apologize for it taking so long, but we knew that we had these reports, and very important reports, especially the budget. So anyway, you know, the floor is yours. Be sure to turn your mic on, and you're good to go.
Good evening. I am here because the board of the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District that I'm here representing, like your board, cares about the community. In particular, we're working together because we care about the children of this community, and in some way, it's a privilege to be here with you tonight. And I think it does reflect the dedication that we all have. I mentioned to you, I think when I was here a month or so ago, that 2 of our 5 board members are former retired teachers from the school system. We are an elected board, like your board, and share that in common. I'm here tonight because of the Soil and Water Stewardship Week observance that we have each year. This is our first time in coming to you and asking you to join with the other governing bodies in the county in helping us proclaim that observance for this year. I think I also mentioned to you previously when I was here that of our 4 strategic planning goals for our board, one of those is conservation education. This year we are on track again to have somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 students, some of those lifelong learners that we might call adults, but many of them students in schools that have participated in our contest. I'm hopeful that we'll be back in another couple of months with some winners at the state level, but I can tell you right now that we have 8 students from Cabarrus County Schools that are going on to participate in state contest over the next 2 months. So it's been quite another successful year on that front. We also are involved in some technical assistance with managing natural resources in the schools. Later in May, we'll have a state-level commission visiting the county to look at some of the good work that's been done at Mount Pleasant High School, where, among other things, there's a bioretention area at the end of the teacher parking lot that's catching stormwater runoff that once went helter-skelter into Adams Creek and is now going through a treatment cell to be cleaned up before it's being released. So very good work that the folks that are drawing attention at the state level. So this year the theme of Soil and Water Stewardship Week is where does your water shed? That project that I just mentioned is a good example of that, knowing where our water is going and what impact it has. We will be distributing posters and an educator's guide to each media center and all of the schools in the Cabarrus County system, and look forward to having that information out there. And thank you once again for joining us in adopting this proclamation and observing this week.
No problem, Dennis. Thank you for being here. Board members, do you have any questions, concerns? Is everybody okay with the consent agenda for the 15th? Okay, all that for that. Dennis, thank you for coming, and it'll go on the consent agenda for the 15th, where we'll be adopting Soil and Water Stewardship Week. That will be April 28th to May the 5th, 2013. Thanks again for coming. Okay, board members, if I have no objection, let's take about a 5-minute break. 5 minutes now. It's 9 o'clock. Let's be back in here rolling at 5 after.
Oh my gosh, I don't think my legs can stay.
You want me to dance?
Okay, board members, we're back rolling. We're back live, ready to go. And our first topic here this evening is the Head Start funding grant application. It's a yearly thing. So, Mr. Van Hukelum, it's your time so that you can tell us about this. And at the end of your presentation, the board will have questions, as usual, if they have any. And then if no questions, it goes right to the consent agenda, and we'll move on.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, this is an annual application for Head Start funding. Tara Natras, our elementary director, is here to explain more about that in detail to you. But again, like Mr. Shue said, this is an annual sign-off on for the board for our funding for Head Start. It is a federal application for a grant. So I'll turn over to Ms. Natras to talk more about that.
So we're just going to give you a little bit of background on Head Start and talk about what our current program is so that you can have some information on what it is that you are providing consent for. So what is Head Start? It is a federal program that promotes school readiness. It's for children ages birth to 5 and really targets our low-income families. There is a focus on cognitive, physical, social, and emotional development, and because of that, you see a lot of comprehensive services in Head Start programs that include health, nutrition, and social services. And throughout the country, Head Start serves over 30 million children and their families. So in Cabarrus County, our vision for Head Start is that we are creating a foundation for lifelong learning that embraces the diversity and the values of the community it serves. And our mission is to empower through education children and their families to be self-sufficient citizens. There is a lot in Head Start that has to do with families as well as children. So you'll see that as you go through the grant application. So in Cabarrus County, our model is based at Long School. We do have a partnership with NC Pre-K, which is a local organization where we have 10 preschool classrooms and 3 of them are dually funded. So within Head Start, we serve 176 3- and 4-year-old children, but within those 3 dually funded classrooms, we're actually serving 53 children within Head Start and NC Pre-K. And the services that are provided, because it is so comprehensive, include things like speech and language therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. We're also required to do dental screenings, hearing screenings, vision screenings, so there's a lot that goes into this program. So the big goal of this program is school readiness, and there are multiple ways that we make this happen at Long, but our key steps for this are that we align our curriculum, our child's outcome goals, and the assessment practices. So just like our school improvement planning processes at all of our schools, we do that within the Head Start program, where we develop the school readiness goals, we complete action steps, and then we're looking for indicators of success. Some of those indicators include classroom walkthrough data, so our administrators at Long School do classroom walkthroughs, and then we assess student progress using multiple data sources. So we have the DIAL, which is a screening tool as students enter the program. We also use the Creative Curriculum Developmental Continuum, which looks at various early learning skills. And then we use an assessment called CIRCLE, which evaluates early literacy and early numeracy skills. And you saw that in the grant where it talked about the different proficiency levels for that particular assessment. So that's just a quick overview of the program itself and what we're currently doing. And we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, board members, you've heard the report here and the statistics. Do you have questions about Head Start? Carolyn, you are Head Start liaison. Do you have any comments you want to add?
I can tell you, we go through quite a bit of process, and you can see, I don't know if it's got a page number, if you go through the application, I think one of the things that you can see, our criteria, our point system, what we give certain points for, I think that's a very, I know that's something that we really take a lot of time in, and that changes from year to year. Like for certain things, we give certain points for. And I tell you, that's something that we take a lot of time, and we use our community assessment. That's what we use, and we update that every year. We use the Health Alliance and the community assessment from the county has, and we use that to come up with how we're going to use that criteria. And like certain things, homelessness, that goes right to the top. If a child's homeless, that's going to be, you're going to get certain points for that. And, you know, that's what we use to find out if a child, where they fall to be eligible for, you know, getting enrolled in the program. But that's something that's very, very important to us. But you'll find that on the application. And I tell you, I've really enjoyed serving with the group and the parent council. The parents, they're very, very involved, and that's what it's all about. And I've really enjoyed serving on the board. But this application, it's very educational. One of the things I think that's very important for us to understand, that this year, this application, we are not having to take the reduction. We're putting it in just like we did last year. But next year, we will have to take that deduction or the decrease because it's the time of year. Our application, we're having to submit it now, but now if we had to submit it like in June, we would have had to take the decrease. What's the percentage?
5%.
5%. But with us having to put our application in now, we are not having to take that 5% right now, but we will have to take it on next year's application. So they told us, I know in the conference we were just in, they had a speaker from the office in Atlanta, and she said that since we were putting our application in now, we would not have to deduct that 5%, but we will have to next year.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter, for that report. And the Head Start's always, it's another not unfunded, it's an underfunded program, because I don't know what our waiting list is, but it's always been quite substantial waiting list. We have 176 students there now, and that's probably full capacity. That's all we can do, but I've seen times where there was several hundred on the waiting list, and I'm sure it's probably still that same way. And we're limited by the space we have, the age of the building, and it's always been a concern. And Ms. Carpenter and myself just did a federal review just last week, I believe it was, week before last, a very intense federal review of our Head Start program. And of all the years that I've served with it, that was the most intense. I think Ms. Carpenter will agree. You know, but anyway, board members, do you have any other questions about Head Start, the grant application? Mr. Walter.
And where do these students go once they graduate? Do they all go there?
They go to our kindergarten classrooms
Are most of them,
where they lived, yeah.
most of them located in that area?
In and around Long, not necessarily, but
We pull kids from all over the county and we provide transportation, so we're able to take students from different pockets, but a lot of them do live in that area. But then they go to any of our kindergarten schools where they reside.
Do we know how many we serve the Logan community?
I don't know the percentage.
And then my last thing is this is a competitive grant, so there's a chance we may not get it, or is it pretty well?
We reapply for the grant every year, but historically, if we've had funding, we will receive the funding for the
Okay,
following year.
so it's. you're
It's
pretty-
not a competitive grant like the I-3 or one of the other ones.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Phillips?
Yes, if we had more funding, I'm sorry, if we had more space, could we ask for more funding to take on more students?
We could, yes.
And so right now, our constraint is we just don't have a building with more space.
Yes, and the issue with Head Start and some of the other programs, and the reason why we do dually enrolled with NC Pre-K, is because it wouldn't necessarily fully fund additional classrooms. So we would have to probably marry some additional Head Start funds with some other funding from a source like NC Pre-K or something to expand the number of classrooms we have, even if we had the space.
Mm-hmm. But what is our waiting list right now?
We're currently accepting applications for the program, so we won't know the waiting list for the upcoming year, but it does usually sit somewhere right around 300 or so.
So we enroll 176, and there's 300 that we can't take in?
Yes.
That was my question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we really need to examine at some point, if we not tonight, a way that we could accommodate
Expand.
more of those students.
But David, I'll give you just 1 second, but as a just a follow-up to that, I had the same thought when I first got here, and then we found out there's some construction, there's something we did at Long School that ties us to that building, that we can't take the program and pick it up and move it somewhere else.
Well, one of the things is we have a pod there there's a pod that we got federal money from and was built there. That pod was federal money, and if we move, we'll have to take up that pod and take it with us wherever we go. It's a real nice pod, but it was federal money, and so wherever we go, we got to take it with us, or we got to tear down everything and keep that pod because it was federal money.
I haven't been on the board. I haven't been on the board very long, but I'm convinced that Lynn Whitkey can do anything. So,
or we got to build around the pod because it was federal money that got us that. So that it all has to do with that big building in the back because it was paid for with federal with Head Start money. So whatever we do, we have to keep it there or keep on site because it was paid for with Head Start money. So whatever we do, am I not correct in that assumption?
we have to account for that in some way.
Jason,
Yeah.
We might have to do a,
Key up, Jason, please.
I'm sorry. I would assume we'd have to account for that cost in some way. So if it was paid for with federal dollars, let's say it was $500,000 paid for, and we were not to take it, we would have to show that we're going to invest $500,000 where the new site would be, or take it with us, one or the other. And I don't know if it has any depreciating value, if that would count against it and be less. I'm not sure, but we could look into that. To Jeff's point about seeing about expanding the program in the future, kind of.
Lynn can put wheels on anything, I'm sure.
That's right. There you go.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it was either 8 or 10 classes, wasn't it, Mr. Wiki? The pod, it was either 8 or 10 classes that we added. Mr. Harrison, do you have any additional questions?
Just that it seems that it's underfunded, but it's under-facilitated as well, and that structurally or by these requirements from previous years, in effect, we've capped ourselves at 100 or under 200. Am I understanding all this correctly, that we can still facilitate, we have a need for 300 more on top of that? Gracious alive.
Well, it's just another one of those deals where it's all around the money. If you got the money, you can just about do anything. But anyway, are there any other further comments, Mr. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Can we have more than one location, even though we have long? Could we, if we invested the money in another location, then create a separate location that would service another part of the county? Obviously, you're having to pull from all over the county, or you have some type of selective process or random drawing, or however you bring your children into the program. But if you have 300 extra, obviously you have enough room for another. You could have another location which would have the same type of capability. Will they allow us to set up a separate location to do this?
We'll have to talk to Janet Purser, who's our Head Start director, to see what happens when we expand sites, because they are often center-based and specific to the location. So it would mean having multiple sites, just like we do with NC Pre-K. Because right now with our NC Pre-K funds, we do have students in classrooms in schools throughout the county. So Head Start has some different regulations, so we'd have to see what would that mean in terms of an additional site. But it is a possibility.
I think those are questions that we as a board
Sure.
would like to investigate in the future, because, you know, we're at this crux with our schools and where are we going to move, and this would be a part of the bigger plan of how are we going to allocate resources in our facilities, and this would help us, especially if we wanted to go in that direction. And there's at least 300 people that are underserved, and there's probably really more. A lot of them will probably have gotten through the word through the grapevine. There's no need to put your name on the list because you're not going to get there. And so how many have gotten disenfranchised by the fact that there's 300 in front of them? So.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Board members, do you have any other questions, concerns?
I have one more comment,
Okay.
and I don't. It's just interesting to me on the services provided. The things that are listed fall under the EC department, and yet on the school readiness team, there's nobody from EC listed on that team. So to me, that seems like there's a disconnect there. That I don't know how that team is selected or picked, but it seems like we've maybe missed something there of somebody that would want to have some input for the department. That's a big part of what we do in the program.
I do have one more question. I'm sorry. After our children graduate from this program, what happens? Right. Do you follow them? Do you see? Can you tell that the program has really done what it's supposed to do, is to give them that head start in their school life? And are you seeing that, or do you find that they reach a certain level and then, because of other things, they start falling back behind the wayside, you know, at third grade or something? You know, what kind of, tell us about what y'all are finding as far as having had the program for a while.
We've been looking at different processes for evaluating that. We haven't really tracked student progress over time, so we have been working with Matthew Fail to talk about how do we track that data, because we do administer some assessments like the circle assessment, and then try to track those students as they go through kindergarten, first grade, second, and throughout, to do kind of a longitudinal analysis, but we haven't yet done that.
And what do you think would be the time frame that you would need to gather the data and to come back to us with some kind of, you know, here's what we kind of see, or we got some intuition about the process now?
And I would say that's been a conversation we've had with the principal there as part of the school improvement plan for that school. We've already talked with Matthew, that was several months ago, probably at the beginning of the year actually, about putting those systems in place to track that data. So I don't know.
I think years out, though, to think we need to look at least K-3. When you look at a lot of the pre-K research, there is some data to show that after third grade, it doesn't always have an impact. So we would want to look at this for several years to see what is the impact then after third grade, and does that continue. So it would be a very longitudinal study. They've done some of this work in a couple of other counties with the programs, and they're starting to share some of those results, and it's taken about 6 years to get that data. So it's a long way out.
So there are two types of measures that we're looking. One is the actual assessments they do with the preschool program to check kindergarten readiness, and they're already collecting that data in the school improvement planning process. However, the longitudinal piece that they've talked about, we looked at connecting that in our current student information management system, which is NCWISE, very complex. However, we're transitioning to a new tool called PowerSchool. So in terms of reaching that complexity to make that happen this year, we decided to go ahead and do the transition to PowerSchool and then make those links. PowerSchool does have a tool that we're hoping will make that a little easier. I'm not going to go into detail, but it is our plan to make that connection in PowerSchool so that we can track them over time and keep them in the system tagged that way, much like you would do if they were an exceptional child or something like that. And hopefully PowerSchool is going to allow us to have that capability. So to bring you actual results, you're probably looking at about 6 months out. To actually put that in the system and pull that data out and extract something meaningful as we roll into PowerSchool starting July.
So the tagging there, we have rosters of students who have been in Head Start or NC Pre-K that we can go back and tag those students. If you received this intervention and an early childhood intervention, now what is your data looking like in kindergarten, first, or second grade? So we waited for the system.
Okay, board members, any other questions?
So how many years of data do you currently have?
Roster data or?
The data that you use for the longitudinal study, how much data do you currently have?
We
Or
know who's been in NC Pre-K.
For how many years?
Forever, as long as we've had NCYs. The problem has been tagging those students and then tracking them because they leave NC Pre-K and go out to all of the other schools. So now with the advent of PowerSchool, which is the new student information system, we can take all of those rosters and say the student who's in third grade at Fur Elementary School today, did they receive this intervention, this early childhood intervention, and we can tag that student and then find out how that child is doing on his EOG scores.
So you were saying it would take about 6 months to do the data mapping from previous systems and ancient records or
Correct, right.
to the new Power
Exactly.
tool
Yeah.
that you're talking about.
So it's an online data student information system. So right now we use NCYs, and we're moving to PowerSchool. Once we migrate all the student information data from one system to another, then we can go back and take the rosters of all the students who have received that Head Start service or NC Pre-K or both, and tag them as such manually, and then run reports quickly.
So then in theory you have high school students who at one time were in Head Start.
I don't know the robustness of the data set for rosters going back that long. I have no idea.
Right,
but
whether
in theory,
the integrity
yes.
of it's valid. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, in theory, yes. I would be confident in 5 years out, but I don't know for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, board members, everybody okay for the consent agenda for the 15th? Everybody okay? Yes. Mr. Phillips, you okay? Everybody okay on this end?
And if we could put both of those reports to make sure both of them go on, because one of them was the monthly report too, and in the future, if we could make sure we put those monthly reports that way, if we got both of them on, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's no problem. We'll have to make sure Ms. Monroe gets that on the monthly report so the board can review that and approve that on a monthly basis, which is a requirement, I understand. Okay, we got you fixed up for the consent agenda on the 15th. Thank you, Jason, and looks like you're still up because 5.2 is the STEM programs, another program that I'm really excited about. Going to be out at the Patriots, and my friend Phil Hull, longtime friend, out at Patriots, so I'm excited to hear about this for you. So, okay, Jason.
And I want to say thank you to Phil for coming tonight and support the program. You have the document there in front of you, and what I'm going to attempt to do tonight is just kind of go through some of the planning that we've done towards this proposal for you, and then entertain any questions or thoughts that you have. The impetus for this proposal comes from again, we're talking about a waiting list of over 300 students for a program that's highly desirable by our community. And when we opened the Magnet School at Culture and Webb, there was initial excitement around that. It quickly filled up, and it was, I think we can say, a big success. But after going through the second year of applications, we were only able to grant 52 spots for students who really wanted to attend, leaving a large waiting list of students who wanted to participate in the STEM education but were not able to due to the space. Okay, so the primary impetus here is space and a waiting list, 300 students that really want to take part in that. In addition, we've talked a lot about choice. We've talked a lot about charter schools for tonight and with the board about just adding choice as an option. We've talked about having a menu of choices for our school system, for our community, and this would be a way to add to that menu in providing another STEM opportunity for our community. And also, you hear a lot about increasing STEM access to students. This understanding that our country has a strong need for the STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and math. In wake of the new unemployment numbers that come out, we have this need for jobs, and yet we have posted jobs that we cannot fill in the United States of America because our workforce is not prepared to do that. And so you have almost this national urgency to really promote STEM education, engineering in particular, with our young people so that they pursue those jobs in the future. So to me, this proposal kind of encapsulates those three things for us. Getting down into the specifics, the next portion there in the report talks a lot about some of the logistical things. And of course, one of the first questions people are going to ask is the plan for student assignment. So we have 300 kids on the waiting list. Immediately, we're going to ask, how are we going to assign kids to school, and which schools will they go to, and how can we be most efficient with our resources? So I tried to categorize that in kind of a long-term, short-term scenario for you. Long-term, the idea would be that we would have 2 STEM zones, a Patriot zone and a Culture and Web zone, and other schools would be assigned to that zone. And if you lived in, for example, the Boger zone, you would be assigned to Culture and Web. But if you lived in the Harrisburg Elementary zone, your STEM school would be Patriots. So long term, the hope would be that they would be assigned based on those zones. You can read through there kind of the plan for that. However, we kind of have a need to grandfather many of the families that have already participated in Culture and Web. And you can imagine if you were the parent of a 5th grader or a 4th grader at Culture and Web, you've taken that chance, you've left your community to go to Culture and Web, and you've made your friends there, you formed community there, you're a part of the PTO there. You don't want to now leave that school potentially and go to Patriots, even though it might be closer to you. So we have a need to keep that in mind. So short term, we're gonna grandfather those families in. We'll give them the option to go to Patriots if they do live in that southern zone, but they wouldn't have to go to that southern zone. So let me work through that, because that's really kind of the urgency of today. Like what's going to happen once we maybe do this. First, our Culture and Web students who live in the southern zone would be given the choice to transfer to Patriots. So we would talk to our current families and say, we're opening this school. If you want to go to Patriots, it's closer to your home. Maybe if you have a kindergartner, 1st grader, you might choose to do that. Once that frees up some space at Culture and Web, we would go to the waiting list, those 300 students that want to participate, and look for Northern Zone families based on their priority rank, and they would be assigned to Culture and Web. Okay. Then the remaining families on the waiting list would have the option to go to Patriots. All right. So that's how we would deal with the student assignment for this first year. Long term, that would slowly migrate to kind of sort itself out to have a northern zone and a southern zone. Plan for transportation would be to continue the hub stop transportation that we've done in the past. And then let's talk about plan for school organization. Okay, it's April. It's a little bit late in the game to be doing a big change like this for a school. So the proposal here is that we would begin a kind of like a school within a school at Patriots for the first year. So next year would not be the entire school being a STEM school. Just those students who are on the waiting list who chose STEM would be a part of the STEM program, and teachers would be a part of that program. And then in the following year, we would migrate the entire school to a STEM school. All right, and that's for ease of transition with teachers, ease of transition with the community, etc. What's that going to look like? It's going to look like between 1 or 2 in kindergarten, probably 3 STEM classrooms, depending on the students on the waiting list. You have those numbers there. And in 2014, we would migrate to the whole school. For teachers, had the opportunity to talk to Patriots teachers the other day, and Dr. Singh was able to talk to Culture and Web teachers on that same day. To pull this off at Patriots, we'd probably need an additional 12 teachers. And the Patriots teachers would be given that first opportunity to kind of volunteer and working with Phil Hall in whether they would want to be that first group of teachers that really buys in early, gets the training, and does STEM education that first year. Okay, they would be given 2 weeks of training in July. However, all of the teachers at Patriots, because we're going to migrate in 2 years, right, to a whole school model, they would have the opportunity to be a part of that training, to kind of get a taste for it, to understand a little bit more about what it's like. And many of them, we hope, will say, yes, this is awesome, we love it, and we're going to continue on. But so, you may have some teachers at Patriots today that might say after next year, you know what, this isn't for me. And I'm going to get myself on the transfer list, and I'm going to go to another school to teach. Okay. Instructional materials, we will have to purchase instructional materials and some technology to get the ratios correct, similar to Coltrane. We're estimating that cost initially to be about $200,000. All right, and that $200,000, you have that list there, what that would cover. Okay. The second page, I think, is important for us to kind of just be aware of. And what I tried to do here is just to identify what I would call known concerns. Okay, you have unknown concerns that are going to emerge as we implement, but we try to be proactive and think about what are some of the pitfalls or what are some of the roadblocks that are going to happen if we pursue this. So you have a couple bullets there that I think are important. Number one is, if we do this, we're inevitably going to create a clog in a pipeline, right? So we have a K-12 pipeline of students from kindergarten through 12th grade that have access to STEM education. By increasing the number of elementary students in the pipeline, we're going to have a clog at J.N. Fries Middle School, okay? And so that's something that would affect us about 2 years from now. All right, so that's something we need to be aware of, and if we want to pursue this, we got to think about how are we going to address that clog. Inevitably, if we address the clog at J.N. Fries, then we create another clog at 9th grade, right? In my early thinking about how we would address some of these clogs, I think J.N. Fries might be easier than Central. I don't know if we can handle more students at Central. I haven't even thought that far ahead. But those are things that we would have to think about as we implement, and know going in that is something we got to address. Okay. The second thing that I think is important to kind of go in with your eyes wide open is the understanding that the Patriot Zone, their physical attendance boundary is going to grow with students. Okay, you have housing developments out there. It's in an area of town that is growing. The school currently has 700 students. It was built for 1,000. It was built for 1,000 for a reason. They expected to have 1,000 kids there, right? So we know that the attendance zone is going to grow. As the attendance zone grows, that kind of pushes out your magnet students, the kids coming from outside the Patriots attendance zone. So you got to think about that as well. For example, just to throw out some numbers, if we were to do this next year, we would start with about a 70-30 magnet. So you would have 70% in Patriot Zone, 30% magnet students. But as people move into that area, that creeps up, 75-25. 80-20, and inevitably it creates another waiting list. Okay, you have more unmet demand for what I think is a great product. I think also, and we've heard from several parents from Culture and Web recently, potentially you're going to have a perception of inequity between the two schools because of the reality of facilities. There's really not much we can do about that, but it is something we have to take into account and know that is something that might be a restrainer for this type of a decision. And finally, Phil, when talking to him, brings up a lot of his concerns about logistics. And Phil would be quick to say these are going to be problems whether we do this or not, because this school is built for 1,000. We need to put 1,000 kids there. But while the school was built for 1,000, he has concerns over parking, already overcrowded parking and traffic patterns with his 700 students. In addition, there's just not a lot of room for trailers on the property. So if we max this out the first year, and then we have an influx of students into the Patriot Zone, we have concerns about overcrowding. Okay, I think it's important for us to kind of think about those things going in. It's not, again, going in with our eyes wide open. Last thing there you have is just some numbers there so you can quickly see where the students are coming from what schools and how many. And then finally, just a quick communication timeline of how this might roll out if we pursue this direction. depending on your thoughts tonight, we would need to begin immediately. We would want to start communicating that tomorrow, literally, if this were to go on the consent agenda tonight. And we would start that process of talking first to Culture and Web parents, then to the waiting list parents, and then to the waiting list parents again with the going to Patriots. A lot to take in. Any questions?
Okay, there you have it, board members. We'll start on Mr. Phillips' side with your questions, concerns. And one thing, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, maybe you did, Jason, I didn't catch it, but the funding, expected $200,000. The funding is what we're going to take from the fund balance, is that correct?
That's
And-
correct.
And then
Yeah.
what about ongoing costs, reoccurring costs after that?
Very good.
And that would be
Yeah.
all I have, and then the board can go around.
Okay, yeah. So when we start a program like this, and similar to what we'll talk about with the Biotech Academy, we like to have a jump start of funding, and a lot of that goes to training and supplies and things like that. But then the expectation is that these schools are self-funding, and they follow the same allotment formulas that all of our other schools. When we allot teachers, it's a formula, and you get as many teachers as this person gets. When we do instructional supplies, AP allotments, etc., they're on their own. Yep. And that has been the case for Culture and Web and Jan Freeze and Central and
Well,
Concord.
it's always a great addition when you make the initial outlay and then you move on with it.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Phillips, if you have questions, concerns, let's move.
I don't really have any questions or concerns. I think on balance, there's a lot of positives here. We have a demonstrated need for more slots in the STEM school. We've got a school that's got open seats, so let's use the facilities that are available and meet the need that's out there.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Harrison?
Can you explain a little bit more about the zones? I mean, if we have a grid here of different schools where there are waiting lists of parents who have indicated an interest or a keen interest in a STEM program, assuming Highway 49 is the cutoff zone between Culture and Web and Patriots, how do you propose to manage the demand spread around the entire county in the context of these two zones?
Yeah.
Maybe you've already addressed that. I just
No,
want
actually,
some more background, please.
we haven't, and that's something that, Dr. Sane and Donna Smith, so Dr. Sane with transportation and Donna Smith with student assignment, we are having those conversations literally right now. We don't have like specifics of you're in this zone, you're in that zone, but the intention would be that long term you would have a geographical boundary for if you live in this zone, you would be applying for and slated to go to the Patriot STEM, and if you lived in this zone, you would go to the Culture and Web STEM, and it would probably be based on their home school.
And in terms of the last slide, you were talking about, in effect, marketing the new STEM beginning today or tomorrow. Would it be okay, or would it be fair or unfair to market the new STEM to the schools that have the highest number of people on the waiting list nearest Patriots? Or am I reading too much into that?
The intention would be to provide enough space with both schools to eliminate the waiting list completely. So we wouldn't have to pit one group against another on that list there that you see by school. In theory, if we move forward with this, every one of these students, all 308 of them, would have an opportunity. We would extend the opportunity to say, we have a spot for you. It might be at Culture and Web, it might be at Patriots. That will depend on several other factors, but we do have a spot, and then parents can say back to us, I'm going to take that spot.
I guess I'm just looking, for example, at the very first one. A.T. Allen has a total of 26 potential students. And as the crow flies, at least, is relatively close to Patriots. But you would appeal to all of these parents all at one time to see who would consent, in effect, to have their children at Patriots.
Yeah.
That would apparently expand the transportation costs. So I guess what I'm, not to play favorites, but I guess what I'm trying to get at or hint at somehow is the schools that have some demand nearest to Patriots would feasibly be their schools that would populate. Patriots, I know you need to be fair, but.
Right. But we're looking at opportunity right now, and we're looking at how can we best serve that with the least amount of cost of transportation, because we know transportation is expensive. There are a couple of options that are possible. I don't want to speculate about them right now, but depending on the length of school day and that sort of thing, there's a couple of options that are possible for kids who are, as you can see, there's a number of kids at Cox Mill who would like to go to the STEM school. And so working on ways to do that, whether we maneuver their hub stops so that it's a more generic hub stop that goes straight over, or whether we go straight to Coltrane and then go over. I just would really hate to do a lot of speculation on that right at the moment, but we are working on it just in case.
I know a parent from the Cox Mill area who is very, very, very keen on getting her child into J.N. Freeze. And I'm thinking, wow, what a distance to travel. And I'm just trying to multiply that in my mind in terms of the bus route and the hubs that you would have to orchestrate to get that done.
Right.
But all over the county, it's quite a challenge. And I'm sure you'll put a lot of effort behind it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Walter, you have questions?
Now, we're not opening up the enrollment process again. We're using the existing list of the 300 people who expected to go or were hoping to go to Culture and Web.
Correct.
I think it's an outstanding idea. I think credit to Dr. Shepard and the staff to come up with creative solutions. Because I'm one of those parents who applied for the STEM school and got rejected. We do a wonderful job of promoting the program, and the turnout's huge, but there's just a very few amount of people that we could actually take. So there's a lot of frustration out there, and I think that addresses that issue. And then you address some of my other concerns. You don't really want to disrupt the school culture over at Culture and Web by losing several students. It would be helpful. I think this is an excellent list of showing us who's on the waiting list, showing us who's actually at Culture and Web now in these different attendance areas.
Okay.
I'd be interested in seeing that. But again, y'all ought to be commended for coming up with a creative solution for handling several different issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Kiger.
Just a quick comment. The transportation piece, I know that's a difficult thing. I guess I'd be a little concerned unless I could be convinced that it's just not that expensive for us. But if we've got students at Culture and Web that are given they live in the Patriot Zone and they are given the option to stay, it's tough for me to pick up the transportation all the way up there if they live down here in the other district. But, again, the transportation is difficult with single-parent families, two working families, and if they've got all that worked out and they just don't want to upset the apple cart, I get it. I mean, I totally understand that. It's just tough for us to pick up that bill when they live closer to the one, and we now have a STEM program there. But all in all, outstanding program. I'm glad to see we're addressing the needs. I think on your slide that shows the known concerns, and I think we need to do this, and I'm ready for it. But this kind of has the classic case of ready, shoot, aim. We know going in where we're going to create a problem 3 or 4 years down the road, and if we're sitting here and we can't address it because of funding or some reason, it's just going to look like we really weren't thinking ahead. Well, we are thinking ahead. We just don't know how we're going to be able to address it. So hopefully, between now and then, we'll have a plan and we can be proactive. The last thing I'd like to do is, Mr. Hull, you've been sitting there for almost 4 hours. You stretch your legs and come to the podium. I've got a question for you. I'm just curious about the traffic concerns at Patriots, whether we do this or not, but it sits back in that development and there's the Parkway. I mean, it's just really, that development is dead. It'll come back sometime, but there's really not any traffic coming in and out of that road, and Griffin operates on a different time schedule. So I'm just expand on a little bit of what the traffic problem is in case there's something that we're missing or need to address.
We're hoping that our attendance zone is what it is, and it'll grow gradually, but we're hoping that the majority of these students are going to be bused in. As far as that's concerned, the school was built, like we said earlier, for 1,000 students, so we should have more buses. We have the space, but as far as the road going in, the logistics of parking and all that stuff, that's on the list because that was the first thing I said to Jason and Dr. Shepard. I said, we struggle with traffic patterns for 700 plus, or right at 700. We're really going to struggle with the traffic patterns of busing, combination of buses and cars, increasing us by 30%, 40%.
Is the struggle because of the proximity of you have to drive in front of the school to get to the parking lot on the other?
You have buses and cars coming in one road. I was at Cox Mill when we were at 1,300 students for all those years, and I can tell you that we had problems just before the high school was there. We still had problems with traffic, but we managed it. You know, it's kind of like we figure out a way. And the problem with Patriots is there's just one road in there. All buses and cars come in that one road.
And not to interrupt, are you talking about the road from Rocky River, all the Parkway Road, or from the Parkway Road into your campus?
Both.
See, I guess maybe one day I'll come sit and watch or something.
Yeah.
It just seems like because of the Parkway not having much traffic, you can go out and turn left without having to stop.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's not a traffic congested area out on Holden Road or even on Rocky River Road. It's just once you get onto our campus.
Okay.
There is the issue. You're right. It's
Because
not
of the
an
neck
issue.
down in front of the school to then get to the other side. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was after. I just wanted to I don't know if physically we can do anything about that.
Right.
And that's a problem.
When we
But-
talked about it, we know that that's going to be an adjustment, but we figured that, we'll make that adjustment, and it'll just be something we'll work through.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Nice seeing you tonight. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes, I had one question. Now, when we talked about this before, they had said that at Freeze there was not a wait list for the IB program. Was that correct?
There is now a wait list for the IB program right now. Yes, there wasn't last year, but there is today.
Well, because that's what I was wondering, because I thought they had said there was not, because people that were on this on the wait list for this, that's what I was wondering, because somebody that was on the wait list for this, they had put, if their child could not get into the STEM program, that they said, okay, I want him to go into the IB program, because he was, my understanding, I think was going from elementary to, would be
Right,
at
to Jan
free,
Freeze, correct.
and he got rejected.
Yeah.
So then the next thing I know, I'm hearing them say, ooh, gonna
Yeah,
take two
yeah.
children over to the charter school. So now I'm wondering now, what is this still gonna do to
Right.
this family? Are we gonna lose two students to a charter school, or are we going to tap on their door again? And there's still a wait list? Is this still not gonna affect these children?
Yeah,
Is what I'm wondering.
This will not help any middle school family who's on the wait list. It's not going to help them at all. And now, last year, IB did not have a waiting list. STEM had a healthy waiting list at Jan Freeze Middle School. But now, this year, they both have a waiting list. So potentially, you could be a rising sixth grade student and apply to STEM for sixth grade at Jan Freeze and put your second choice as IB and not get into either of those programs. Whereas the year before, you kind of always knew you could get into IB if you really wanted STEM, if that makes sense.
But they have wait lists at both of them,
Yes.
so the only one that could help then would be just the
Elementary, yeah.
elementary.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
So they do have a wait list, because when did that wait list start for the IB then?
This year, with the close of this year's application window.
Okay. Because when they said there was not a wait list.
Right.
So.
So that was when was that? February 1st?
And we don't have a wait list at Concord High. So
Correct. Okay. Yeah. We
So
don't.
there's not one for the high school,
No.
just for the just for the,
So you have these driving cohorts, these initial cohorts, we kind of call them the first responders who really wanted the education. They kind of took the risk to go to an unknown program. And so those cohorts are smaller, but then as the program has become successful, you build up more demand, and then you have wait lists a couple of years later.
oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Shoemaker? Okay, all right, well, that's good.
One last question.
Yeah, well, thing is, though, it's a wonderful program.
You have an update on
It's
the
a
game?
Great addition, solving a lot of problems and making us more attractive to the people out there, so.
If
Mr.
I
Harrison?
may, can I hog Mr. Shoemaker's 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, you got it.
If he'll give the floor to me, I would appreciate it. The grid does not show a waiting list at Coltrane Webb or from Coltrane Webb. Are there numbers of parents currently at Coltrane Webb who would like to be in the Coltrane Webb STEM program, or do I misunderstand something? Does the current, are there?
It's not a school.
It's not, oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the whole school is STEM. Yes, okay.
So
thank
this
you. Yeah, the whole
grid
school is
does
STEM.
account for all of the waiting lists countywide.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve this now.
Well, we can do that, can't we?
Because I'm not going
I
to
mean,
be here,
yeah,
so
we
I would like
we
to do.
we can, yeah. Well, but Carol's not going to
I'm
be
not
here,
gonna be
and she
here.
won't be able to be here because she's going to be out of town, I think. But anyway,
actually help us if you could.
yeah, with the tight time constraints that we have, and you need to move on this, I would accept Carolyn's motion that we approve this, and if I get a second, we'll vote on it. and
I'll
move forward.
second. I'll second.
Mr. Harrison seconded it. Are there any more discussion before we vote?
There's no discussion about this. I guess there's some discussion about the motion, and I mean, I guess we're operating, Mark has said we can do this, but it's a little bit out of the norm. We typically put something on the consent agenda. It's almost 100%, no, it's 99%. I myself pulled something off the consent a month ago, but I don't, if it's on the consent agenda, it's good as approved. I don't know why we need to jump ahead with one particular item. We're going to have 7 other items that are going to be on the consent agenda.
They've just got a lot of preparation.
Well, but
They got a lot of preparation to do for this, getting the notice out and everything. That's why I wanted to go ahead and get it.
But the schedule
approved.
was set with us knowing we were going to operate and put it on the consent agenda. I mean, I guess we could vote on this faster than we could argue about it, so maybe that's what we ought to do.
Yeah.
Since it's
Go
10
ahead.
o'clock.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Do I have, who all's in favor, say aye.
I made it.
Yeah. If you're in favor of approving the STEM program at Patriots, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, motion carries, Jason. You got, okay, move right on with your STEM program at Patriots. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
just.
I should.
All right, let's move along now. We got to get moving, guys. It's your time. It's your time.
Okay,
All right,
last,
the next item is 5.3, the Biotech Academy. But I tell you, before we do that, the cameramen are flashing me. It's time to change disc again. So just hang on 1 minute, Jason. We'll pick back up.
wow.